أنشأتم شجرتها أم نحن المنشئون نحن جعلناها تذكرة ومتاعا للمقوين فسبح باسم ربك العظيم فلا أقسم بمواقع النجوم وإنه لقسم لو تعلمون عظيم إنه لقرآن كريم في كتاب مكنون لا يمسه إلا المطهرون تنزيل من رب العالمين أفبهذا الحديث أنتم مدهنون وتجعلون رزقكم أنكم تكذبون فلولا إذا بلغت الحلقوم وأنتم حينئذ تنظرون ونحن أقرب إليه منكم ولكن لا تبصرون فلولا إن كنتم غير مدينين ترجعونها إن كنتم صادقين فأما إن كان من المقربين فروح وريحان وجنة نعيم وأما إن كان من أصحاب اليمين فسلام لك من أصحاب اليمين وأما إن كان من المكذبين الضالين فنزل من حميم وتصلية جحيم إن هذا لهو حق اليقين فسبح باسم ربك العظيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا وقعت الواقعة ليس لوقعتها كاذبة خافضة رافعة إذا رجت الأرض رجا وبست الجبال بسا فكانت هباء منبثا وكنتم أزواجا ثلاثة فأصحاب الميمنة ما أصحاب الميمنة وأصحاب المشأمة ما أصحاب المشأمة والسابقون السابقون أولئك المقربون في جنات النعيم ثلة من الأولين وقليل من الآخرين على سرر موضونة متكئين عليها متقابلين يطوف عليهم ولدان مخلدون بأكواب وأباريق وكأس من معين لا يصدعون عنها ولا ينزفون وفاكهة مما يتخيرون ولحم طير مما يشتهون وحور عين كأمثال اللؤلؤ المكنون جزاء بما كانوا يعملون لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا تأثيما إلا قيلا سلاما سلاما وأصحاب اليمين ما أصحاب اليمين في سدر مخضود وطلح منضود وظل ممدود وماء مسكوب وفاكهة كثيرة لا مقطوعة ولا ممنوعة وفرش مرفوعة إنا أنشأناهن إنشاء فجعلناهن أبكارا عربا أترابا لأصحاب اليمين ثلة من الأولين وثلة من الآخرين وأصحاب الشمال ما أصحاب الشمال.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum, dear Sheikh, brothers and sisters. Thank you all for joining us. Inshallah, to start tonight's program, I would like to welcome our dear brother Ali Abbas for some recitation from the Ali Jum'ah, from some recitation from the Holy Quran. Please help me welcome him with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.
صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجك.
ثانية على الحب الزهراء صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجك.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هل أتى على الإنسان حين من الدهر لم يكن شيئا مذكورا إنا خلقنا الإنسان من نطفة أمشاج نبتليه فجعلناه سميعا بصيرا إنا هديناه السبيل إما شاكرا وإما كفورا إنا أعتدنا للكافرين سلاسل وأغلالا وسعيرا إن
الأبرار يشربون من كأس كان مزاجها كافورا عينا يشرب بها عباد الله يفجرونها تفجيرا يوفون بالنذر ويخافون يوما كان شره مستطيرا ويطعمون الطعام على حبه مسكينا ويتيما واسيرا إنما نطعمكم لوجه الله لا نريد منكم جزاء ولا شكورا إنا نخاف من ربنا يوما عبوسا قمطريرا فوقاهم الله شر ذلك اليوم ولقاهم نضرة وسرورا وجزاهم بما صبروا جنة وحريرا متكئين فيها على الأرائك لا يرون فيها شمسا ولا زمهريرا ودانية عليهم ظلالها وظللت قطوفها تذليلا ويطاف عليهم بآنية من فضة وأكواب كانت قوارير من فضة قدروها تقديرا ويسقون فيها كأسا كان مزاجها زنجبيلا عينا فيها تسمى سلسبيلا ويطوف عليهم ولدان مخلدون إذا رأيتهم حسبتهم لؤلؤا منثورا ويطوف عليهم ولدان مخلدون إذا رأيتهم حسبتهم لؤلؤا منثورا وإذا رأيت ثم رأيت نعيما وملكا كبيرا عليهم عاليهم ثياب سندس خضر واستبرق وحلوا أساور من فضة وسقاهم ربهم شرابا طهورا إن هذا كان لكم جزاء وكان سعيكم مشكورا صدق الله العلي العظيم.
صلى الله على محمد وآل محمد.
Hasan, Brother Ali, inshallah, another loud salawat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Inshallah, just a few announcements before we begin. Inshallah, just a reminder, inshallah, the cafeteria and the nursing room are available downstairs. Inshallah, if there's a little more space needed for the children. There is a kids program, inshallah, at 7 that started now for ages 3 to 6. Inshallah, if parents would like to sign up their children, you're more than welcome to go down there. Please monitor our social media updates for Laylatul Qadr, A'mal, and other programs happening in the community. If you could please help me recite Surah Al-Fatiha for all the shuhada striving on the path of Al-Quds, our more recent shuhada with the aggression that is currently taking place on our brothers and sisters in Yemen, and for all the mu'mineen around the world. Inshallah, we will remind the brothers and sisters directly after the lecture, there will be salat and then there will be iftar. So if you did not know or you did not sign up, we please ask you all to please join us, inshallah. Without further ado, if you could please help me welcome our teacher, our scholar, our leader, Sheikh Usama, with 3 loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Okay. So, dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So welcome everybody, and alhamdulillah, today for the second time we'll have the pleasure of being able to talk a little bit about Imam Hassan. So I offer all of you and all of those who are following us online and the entire ummah, congratulations on the birthday of Imam Hassan. Inshallah, many happy returns. So as I mentioned yesterday as the first part of our little mini-series, the idea that Imam Hassan was one of the most misunderstood and underappreciated of the personalities of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Unfortunately, the way that he's viewed now by some, and of course this is not intentional, nobody is doing this, none of the Shia of Amirul Mu'mineen are doing this intentionally. It's because they don't know any better. The enemies of Imam Hassan were so threatened by him that even after his martyrdom, then you find both the Umayyads and the Abbasids were busy doing character assassination. You see, Imam Hassan, even at his time, he was such a threat, as I mentioned yesterday, that when he finally did leave this world, then Muawiyah did sajda, did takbir and then sajda, and those who were with him did takbir and sajda, because he was that much of a threat. Even after him, the memory of Imam Hassan, the inspiration that he gave, and his children, meaning his grandchildren, who were leading revolts against these illegitimate governments, they wanted to take them out. So the way to take them out was to go after the root and to attack Imam Hassan. Because of that, then there was a lot of misinformation that was spread about our Imam, and that misinformation, unfortunately, seeped its way into the hearts and the minds of the believers. So Muslims now, unfortunately, sometimes when they want to describe or justify why they're not doing their responsibility, they will say that I'm being like Imam Hassan, right? To that extent, that he's a weakling and we are being like this Imam. That is the opposite of the reality of his situation. Today, if Allah gives tawfiq, we'd like to collectively review some of his contributions, just some of his contributions. As I mentioned yesterday, this is a drop in the ocean of what our Imam did for us, but at least even if we can come somewhat closer to this personality, appreciate him, and then after that take those lessons for ourselves right now. Any bit of that would be good. I want to mention the last part of the speech, inshallah, will be focused on the ceasefire between him and Muawiyah and the lessons we can get from that, the challenges that he faced, why he accepted the ceasefire, and then what did he achieve by doing the ceasefire? But this also, his ceasefire added to his madhlumiyah. He already was misunderstood, but then the ceasefire didn't help. How? You see, what they tell us is this. Sometimes historical events are clear at their time. In real time, this event is clear, but later on it becomes confusing. For instance, if you look at the seerah and the method and the way of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, at their time, their followers knew that they were following these incredible individuals. They are champions. Later, for people now, we really don't know much. What did Imam Hadi do? We know he's great. What did Imam Jawad do? We don't know. Later, it becomes unclear. There are some things which are the opposite. At the time when they're happening, then people aren't clear on them. But then later, over the course of time, then it becomes very clear and people appreciate. So for instance, now if you look at us as Muslims, now we look back at the Treaty of Hudaybiyah and we know that the Prophet, that was Fath Mubin, that was a clear victory. Now we understand it years later. But unfortunately, the ceasefire of Imam Hassan, it wasn't understood then by many of the people, his own people at his time, during his time, real life. People didn't understand what the contribution of the Imam was. 1,400 years later, many people don't understand what it is that the Imam did for us. Can we easily, and this is just now the masses of the Shia, can we easily explain to others how Imam Hassan saved Islam and the Quran? Is it that clear? Or even now, 1,400 years later, we find that no, his contributions are not like that. Now, that's just one of his contributions. I want to list some other contributions, again with the idea that you and I, we weren't going over a history lesson. This wasn't just a chance to talk about how great he was, and then we say, well, we have such a wonderful Imam. Rather, we were trying to take lessons for ourselves. How can we be Hassani? What can we take from his seerah so that we can help the cause in the right way? Now, having said that, then I also want to mention this. This is kind of related to what I mentioned yesterday, the idea of us trying to draw lessons from the greatness of the Imam and making certain intentions. Our test is not Muawiyah at that time. It's the camp of Muawiyah at our time. But Allah takes our intentions and our hearts very seriously. There will be times, and I'm going to mention some of the ahadith, that you and I will hear some parts of the story of the Imam Hassan and we'll be determined not to allow history to repeat itself. And that decision that sometimes you and I make when we hear these stories of the Ahlul Bayt, God takes those very seriously, but allow me to share some ahadith with you. The first point is the idea that the heart is very important for God, your heart. The decisions you make are either pushing the cause of the Imam forward, or God forbid, because the Imam is waiting on us, our decisions in our hearts can delay the return of our master. Some hadith. This first one says this: Inna bin niyat khulida ahlul jannah fil jannah wa ahlun nar fil nar. So our Prophet says to us, truly it is with the intentions, because of the intentions, that those people who are the inhabitants of paradise become permanent residents of paradise for eternity. God saw in the heart the determination of the believer. You and I only lived 60 years, but God saw the determination, what we were trying to do. For that reason, Allah makes the person stay permanently in paradise. And the same is true for the people who end up going to hell. Our good intentions affect us in this world and the next. Right? Before we get to the lessons, at least just keep in mind how important it is. Our intentions, what we think, what we're hoping for, what we're praying for, it affects us in this world and the next. Hopefully we can use some of these reminders because we have those nights of Qadr coming up. The nights of Qadr, the state of your heart is very important for Islam. Okay? So some ahadith just about the intention. This is from Imam Sadiq. He says, Man hasunat niyatuh. The person who has a good niyyah, literally, Allah saw in your heart, you want khair for this ummah. Allah the hadith says, Zadallah fi rizqih. Allah saw the intention. Because of that, even here in the dunya, Allah will increase this person in their rizq with one niyyah. In the heart of hearts, I wish I could do more. My heart burns when I hear what happened to the Imam. It also affects our akhirah. Our akhirah, where we're all traveling to. The hadith is this, again from Imam Sadiq. Inna Allah yahshuru an-nas ala niyatihim yawm al-qiyamah. On the day of judgment, Allah will resurrect people based on their intentions. Based on their intentions. Some of you might be hearing these stories and really say that, you know what, I want to sacrifice myself for my Imam, my chance. This is a history lesson for me. Listen to the niyyah about that hadith. The hadith is this from the Prophet. He says, Man sa'alallah ash-shahada. The person who requests from Allah martyrdom, bisidqin. Between him and Allah, he's serious about this. He doesn't want to fail the test of his Imam. This person, ballaghahullah manazil ash-shuhada. Allah will make this person achieve and reach those stations of the shuhada. Even, the hadith continues, even if the person ends up dying on his bed. God saw the heart. Allah saw the heart of the individual. Based on your heart, Allah changes your direction. So, now a story that's not true, and then inshallah, one last hadith, and we'll get into our main discussion. First, salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Not true, inshallah. A guy named Bob came into the lunchroom. He opened up his lunch, and then this guy said, "Oh man, tuna sandwich again?" He turned to his coworker and he said, "You want to trade?" I was like, "No, I don't like tuna." He just forced himself to eat it. The next day he came in again. He opened his lunch. "Oh my God, tuna!" And his coworker's just watching him silently. The third day he came in, again he's complaining, and this time the guy's not saying anything, just watching as he goes through this whole ritual. Tuna again, why tuna? Finally, the coworker just said, "Buddy, why don't you just ask your wife next time to pack you something besides tuna?" And the guy said, "I'm not married. I pack my own lunch." Normally, we pack our own lunches. It's easy to blame others, but the majority of time, we pack our own lunches. I want to mention a beautiful hadith about niyyah. Inshallah, after that, we go over the lessons of the Imam, and you start making those niyyat. Sometimes you might make a niyyah, even as a child, this can happen. A small child can make a niyyah between them and God. 20 years later, Allah will start moving things in the person's life. You might even, brothers and sisters, forget you made that niyyah. You might forget you made that niyyah. Allah will start moving things around, bring people into your life, moving opportunities, because God is very good. I mentioned the hadith last time. He said, "O son of Adam, just stand up. I start walking to you." If you walk, he says, I run. So that niyyah, Allah will literally start rewriting your history, your destiny, based on one simple niyyah. Hadith now from the Prophet. The hadith is this from the Prophet. He says, Ma asarra abdun sariratan. There is no slave who between him and Allah makes a niyyah, a secret niyyah between me and Allah. I hear about Imam Hassan, I hear about Imam Hussein, I say never again. You make those good niyyah, and you see what Allah does. Illa albasahullah rida'aha. Allah will take that same niyyah that you had, and He will make it your clothes. He will clothe you in that niyyah. You'll see the niyyah start to play out. That's because God saw and God never forgot. Now, brothers and sisters, we just want to talk about some of his contributions. Like I said, if there's time today, I really want to spend the majority of the time talking about that contribution which the Ahlul Bayt, if you look at the hadith from Imam Baqir, he said the treaty, that ceasefire, was better for this ummah than everything the sun shines on. That's one of his contributions. Inshallah, most of our time we're going to spend on that, but I want to talk about some of those other contributions just for us to start thinking. Okay. One of the contributions of the Imam, before we get to the big one, is being a father. Brothers and sisters, you and I, as a parent, your niyyah is very important. If you will try your best to raise your, I'm going to talk about Imam Hassan. You try your best to raise your children right, you see what Allah does for you. Hadith, the hadith is this: Man qaddama awladan. Whoever can present children, yahtasibuhum indallah. On the day of judgment, I'm expecting, based on what I knew, I did proper tarbiyah, yahtasibuhum indallah. I'm expecting reward from Allah based on this because I sacrificed. I tried. The hadith says, this for us, hajabuhu min an-nar bi'idhnillah. Those same children will act as a barrier, as a hijab between that mu'min and the fire. Niyyah, effort. Imam Hassan was an incredible father. All of us can learn this lesson of being parents, being there, being present, trying, being loving, having conversations, spending time. As you know, no one can be compared to the shuhada of Karbala. Right? Our shuhada were great. We can compare our shuhada even to the shuhada of Uhud, of Badr, of Khandaq. We have many of Khaybar, other battles, believers lost lives. But no one can be compared to those 72. One of the contributions of Imam Hassan are his children, Qasim, Tarbiyah, not Ma'asum, one of the 72 who are immortalized. One of them is Qasim, but he's not the only one. You also remember his other son, Abdullah, who saw his uncle and came rushing on the battlefield. What about his daughter, Muhammad? Right? Remember, one of Imam Hassan's daughters was so exceptional. There was no woman like her amongst the children of Imam Hassan. She becomes the mother of Imam Baqir. As you know, all of the A'imma, from Imam Baqir onwards, are the grandchildren of Imam Hassan. That young lady was so special. She was there in Karbala, the mother of Imam Baqir, the result of the tarbiyah of Imam Hassan. More than that, even some of his children fought in Karbala. Like one of them was Hasan al-Muthanna. This man fought so hard on that day, lost so much blood fighting for Imam Hussein, he passed out on the battlefield. It just wasn't, Allah hadn't written for him that he would go back to Allah. But he was trained, he was there. A lot of people failed that test. So that's one of his contributions. Now, another one of his contributions, the contributions of the Imam, is that because of his stance, he prepared the grounds for Karbala. All of those qiyams that would later happen, where the believers were able to push back, like Karbala, able to push back against those tawaghit. Who created the grounds for that? Imam Hassan. I want to take us back for a second to the time of Amirul Mu'mineen to talk a little bit about the method that the Ahlul Bayt used when it came to training, right? So a step back with Amirul Mu'mineen, then we'll go back to this discussion. So Amirul Mu'mineen, for those 25 years where he was not politically in charge, he wasn't the outward caliph. He wasn't the caliph. During that time, two of the things that our Imam did were incredible. One of the things that our Imam did was to create generational wealth. Our Imam during that time, when he's making those gardens and he's planting those wells, our Imam, by doing his farming, is creating generational wealth. They said, when they estimated the amount yearly of the Imam's, money that was coming out of the Imam's farms, it was 40,000 gold dinars yearly. That generational wealth allowed our Imams, the later Imams, not to have to do regular jobs. That funded the mission. You see, when khums became serious, because believers were giving khums, but khums is something, it doesn't have a specific time, right? People were giving it, they're under pressure, not making so much. The time when khums became enough that the Ahlul Bayt could rely on that as a source for their operations is the time of Imam Qadim. Before that, how were the Ahlul Bayt able to fund the mission? Imam Ali. He did something else too. The other thing that he did, and this is where you're going to learn from the method that was used, was to train individuals who would be able to help him later. And some of the training of the Imam wasn't done openly. What you're going to see is that when 25 years later, the Imam ends up taking the reins, the political reins of the Ummah to guide them from that right that had been stolen from him. Allah had granted him the right to Khilafah. That was stolen from him. You see that when the Imam started his mission, he had individuals. I mentioned two groups. One of them were the spies of the Imam. So the Imam had an extensive intelligence network. Not only, and you remember in Nahj al-Balagha, many times where the Imam would write that such and such governor would mess up, and the Imam would say, I heard this happened under your direction, right? Those were top-level, top-tier Shia, who even 1,400 years later, we don't know who those guys were. But the Imam had his intelligence apparatus over the whole Islamic community, and they were writing him reports and letting the Imam know and make the right decisions. In addition to that, they were also in Syria, keeping watch on Muawiyah. And again, the enemy unable to find out, and the Imam's over there telling Muawiyah, I heard about this. Who are those people? These are the spies of the Imam. When did he train them? During the 25 years. Some of the individuals who later you see are the right hand of the Imam, you don't see in history where the relationship was and how he trained them. For instance, Malik Ashtar. When the Imam rises, suddenly his right-hand man is Malik al-Ashtar. When did he meet him? When did he talk to him? How did he train him? But when the Imam rose, he was ready. He didn't, at the time that he rose, say, Malik, come here. Let me sit you down. Let me train you. He had already done that hard work. Part of the contribution of Imam Hassan, inshallah we'll talk about later, is this, that he bought time for the believers during the ceasefire, and he trained those individuals who would be able to later help Imam Hussein. That took time, but inshallah we'll get to that. What else did our Imam do? One of the things that our Imam did, another one of the contributions, was that he was our first Imam to take the Shia of Amir al-Mu'mineen into the true taqiyya. Not fake taqiyya. The true taqiyya. Let me mention a hadith of Imam Sadiq. He says this. So right taqiyya, that's a weapon, that's taking down the enemies, not taqiyya to run away from responsibilities. The hadith says this, Al-mu'min mujahid. The believer is in a state of jihad. Yujahidu a'da Allah ta'ala fi dawlatil batil bit-taqiyya. During the time where the government is not in the hands of the righteous, not in the hands of those appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the mu'min does jihad. How? Bit-taqiyya. But the right kind of taqiyya. We'll talk about that inshallah a little bit later. And then the Imam continues. He says, وَفِي دَوْلَةِ الْحَقِّ. But when the truth has been given to the rightful owners, then you'll see بِالسَّيْف. The mu'min is doing jihad, but with that. So, up until the time of Imam Hassan, the activities of the Shia were out in front of the open. Certain things happened, and I'll mention them, that happened in the time of Muawiyah that meant that we had to go underground. For the other Imams, the later Imams, for a moment we come out of this in the time of Imam Hussein, but then after that, for the later Imams, the Imams were able to do so much with their covert operation. They literally had, but who was the first person to start all of this? It started in the time of Imam Hassan. So, now we'll talk a little bit about that greatest contribution of our Imam. And each and one of these things that I mentioned, brothers and sisters, they're areas for us just to think about. What would we have done? What could we do now? How important is the clarification jihad now? What's our job? What are we supposed to do? So, as you know, one of the things that Imam Hassan did was to expose who Muawiyah was. That itself was a feat, and that saved Islam. I'll explain a little bit about that later. Initially, our Imam did want to go to war with Muawiyah. The intention of the Imam, when the people came and they made bay'ah to the Imam, was to go over and to take Muawiyah down, to save Islam by taking him down. The thing is, there were a lot of challenges at the time of Imam Hassan that prevented him from doing this responsibility. Otherwise, like he said, if I had found followers, I would have fought Muawiyah day and night. What were some of the challenges of Imam Hassan? One of the challenges of Imam Hassan was this. The masses of the Muslims, and you and I keep this in mind when we talk about the clarification jihad, the masses of the Muslims did not know what true Islam was. They had a very superficial understanding of Islam. The idea of Islam as a few rituals, some slogans, they liked what they heard, right? But it hadn't been an opportunity, and those people who had introduced Islam to them were not the kind of people who would have introduced them to the real Islam, real Tawheed. Let me just mention a few things that are there in real Islam that would have stopped someone like Muawiyah. But the Muslims didn't know. They knew about Islam as hijab and salah and fasting, right? But what was it that they were missing out of the spirit of Islam that would allow a taghiyah like Muawiyah to rule over all the Muslims? A couple of things just right now, just for us to think about. True Islam, brothers and sisters, is absolute obedience to Allah and rejection of obedience to anyone other than God. If you remember the ayat of the Quran that we've covered, we learn that obedience to others and disobedience to Allah is shirk, polytheism. But the Muslims didn't know that. The Muslims didn't know that true Islam is absolute justice. There's no favoritism. There isn't a stratified society where some people are wealthy, all of the resources of the society are for them. You and I, we're just puppets, we're part of the machine. The kingmakers are the ones who really benefit by the laws, by the policies, by the governments. The Muslims didn't know that. What else? The true Islam negates racism. Even now, it's surprising. You see, sometimes there's a little bit of latent racism that's still in us Muslims. Sometimes it comes out at the time of marriage. You'd be surprised at what people say when they want to get married. What was another challenge? The masses of the Muslims had no idea who Muawiyah was. The vast majority of the Muslims, for them, Muawiyah was the uncle of the mu'mineen, the brother-in-law of the Prophet. His sister was married to the Prophet. The person who was one of the compilers of Wahi, writing down revelation. The people had no idea, the masses of Muslims had no idea what it meant to have Muawiyah in charge. I want to give you one simple hadith for us just to kind of keep in mind, and then after that, a verse of Quran for us to think about. Even now, why is it the Muslims don't know who Muawiyah is? There's a hadith which is consecutively narrated. It's mutawatir. Shia, Sunni, everybody narrates this hadith. What is that hadith? The hadith is about Ammar. Ammar, the Prophet's one of his best companions. What is that hadith that all Muslims narrate? The hadith is this: Wayha Ammar, taqtuluhu al-fi'atul baghiyah. Ammar will be killed by the Zalimeen, the group that is Zalim. What is this group like? What is Ammar like? Hadith. Yad'uhum ilal Jannah. Ammar is inviting these people to Jannah. Wa yad'unahu ilal nar. They are inviting the people to the fire. Way of distinguishing, left behind by the Prophet. Now, the group that was inviting people to the fire, where did they kill Ammar? In the Battle of Siffin. Who is the leader, the imam of that group? Muawiyah. What does the Quran say? And because we don't have time, I'll just give you the address. Surah 28, verse number 41 and 42. What does God say about those a'imma that are calling people to the fire? Right? So the Prophet told all the Muslims, consecutively narrated, right? Muawiyah is one of the people who was there who tried to kill the Prophet and assassinate him. Right? One of the people tried to make his camel run off. Right? These people, Muawiyah is the leader, but the believers have no idea. What else was there as a challenge? The Muslims at that time, the masses, were tired of war. They had been going at it for a long time. In the time of Imam Ali, there were 3 bloody campaigns that the Imam fought. The last battle, the Battle of Nahrawan, came at a huge cost for the Islamic Ummah. Remember, Nahrawan, the Khawarij, Daesh of our time, they were also from Kufa. So that meant after the Battle of Nahrawan, and Amir al-Mu'minin tried his best not to have that fight, but there's no way he had to put down that rebellion. That meant in your neighborhood, there are 10 guys, 3 or 4 the Khawarij, 7 or 4 Amir al-Mu'minin. In your city, right? The remnants of the Khawarij still live there. Their families, people were still angry, right? So now, the people were very tired of war. 2, Muawiyah wasn't bound by Islamic law. Imam Hassan had to stick to what Allah said, Quran, Sunnah, not Muawiyah. I'll give you an example of the challenges that Imam Hassan faced. Imam Hassan, he sent his own cousin to be his commander-in-chief of one of his lead armies, Ubaydullah. Ubaidullah had personally had two of his sons who were not baligh killed by Muawiyah's forces in front of their own mother. Right? So his wife watched two of her own sons, this man. So how much hatred should there be? First of all, you're cousins with Imam Hassan. Two of your kids have been slaughtered by Muawiyah. But Muawiyah is not bound by the laws of Islam. Do you know how much Amirul Mu'mineen would give a soldier, one of his officers, for a year's salary? 500 dirhams. How much did Muawiyah offer this man? 800,000 dirhams. Imam Hassan can't do bribes. He can't. Muawiyah could lie and say that the Imam has accepted the peace treaty. Another challenge, this one just to think about. The army of Muawiyah was ethnically homogeneous. Syrians, Arabs. The army of Imam Hassan was diverse. There were Muslims from all backgrounds there. It's easier when you have a group that's ethnically homogeneous and being motivated by the dunya than a group that has a lot of different backgrounds. How do you bring those people together? People speak different languages, and they had learned under Amirul Mu'mineen, they did get a chance to have a voice, to talk, to speak, and that's the Islamic way. It's not supposed to be based on racism. But was it more challenging? 100%. It's easier to motivate people for the dunya short term. Yes, it's true. If you can get people to be motivated for the akhirah, they will outdo those who are motivated by the dunya. But short term, for superficial people, the dunya is a very powerful motive. What else with the people who were there at the time of Imam Hassan didn't recognize his greatness? I mentioned just a little bit of his manaqib yesterday, but remember, he had big shoes to fill. The person who had been in charge before him was Amirul Mu'mineen. If you want to see if this makes sense, right now in Lebanon, think about Sheikh Naim Qasim and Sayyid Hasan Nasrullah. Okay? Sayyid Hasan was a living legend in his own time. Those are big shoes to fill. Amirul Mu'mineen, Allah brought the son back for him. He's the brother of the Prophet. He's Nafsur Rasul. He's killed Marhab. So many, right? Imam Hassan was wonderful, incredible. But people didn't recognize that greatness and to say, I follow the position, not the person. So, very quickly, what did the ceasefire achieve? How did it destroy Muawiyah? How did it save Islam? One of the things that was there in the ceasefire was the idea that the Muslims would not be able to be pursued, not be able to be killed without trial. The Shia would not be able to be hunted down. Those top companions of the Imam, that they would not be able to be hunted down. And for the duration of the life of Imam Hassan, although Muawiyah was a terrible person, the personality of Imam Hassan was so great, Muawiyah didn't dare violate the treaty. Let's say 90%, 80%, he honored it. The same Muawiyah who was berserk. But it wasn't the case that, and it wasn't willingly. The murders and killings and all those things you heard about the Shia, that started after the 10 years. Those notable companions you heard about, how the Imam Muawiyah would be slaughtering them, that was after Imam Hassan. In the time of Imam Hassan, that wasn't possible. So, just to make it easy for us to keep in mind, imagine what these 10 years of peace would mean. Someone was fighting the Daesh or ISIS, literally slaughtering people. And then for 10 years you have peace. What does that do? 10 years of peace. Muawiyah is somebody, we don't know. Muawiyah is somebody who killed 100,000 people in Yemen alone. Just in Yemen. This is the kind of person we're talking about. That 10 years of peace was a chance for our Imam to train the next generation who'd be able to be those soldiers for the Imam. Another thing that the Imam that he did was to stop the cursing of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Why was this important? The cursing of Amir al-Mu'mineen was a way, as you know, the cursing of Amir al-Mu'mineen is like cursing the Prophet. It's not about cursing Amir al-Mu'mineen. But the Muslims don't know that. They don't get that. The cursing of Amir al-Mu'mineen, because it had to stop during the time of Muawiyah, that cursing of Amir al-Mu'mineen was to block the door of guidance for the people. To block the door of guidance for the people. During the time of Imam Hassan, Muawiyah wouldn't dare to do that. Yes, sometimes in Syria, sometimes in his own castle, then he would do it. There's actually a story that I wanted to share with you guys of how Imam Hassan would react and the towering personality of Imam Hassan, how that stopped people. Let me just tell you one story, inshallah, maybe we'll appreciate our Imam a little bit more. One of the individuals, a terrible man, was named Muawiyah bin Hudayj, one of the worst of people on the earth. In the time of Muawiyah, in the castle in Syria, this man went over and he assaulted Amir al-Mu'mineen. Imam Hassan found out. He said, tell me when these guys come to Medina. They came for Hajj. After the Hajj, they came to Medina. Someone said, that's him over there. The Imam went right over to Muawiyah and Muawiyah bin Hudayj. And they're all eating their wonderful meal. The Imam stood right on top, right over on this guy. And in front of everyone, he was like, are you Muawiyah bin Hudayj? The guy was so terrible. We don't appreciate now the personality of Imam Hassan. This guy was a monster. Couldn't even look up at the Imam. He said, you cursed Amir al-Mu'mineen in the gathering of Muawiyah. Then after that, we only have 20 seconds. Inshallah, we'll leave the rest of it for later. But the Imam, so what our Imam did, just if we could just take this one thing, we have 13 seconds. What our Imam did was this. He saw that it was dangerous for Islam if he were to go to battle with Muawiyah. He wasn't going to win that war with those kind of people. His own troops were attacking the Imam in the battle camp. He's making salat, literally has to have bodyguard to make salat. How can you win with these guys? What he did was to sacrifice himself so Islam would survive. Allah spared Amir al-Mu'mineen this tragedy. If Amir al-Mu'mineen was alive, he would have had to make the peace treaty with Muawiyah. Allah saved him, spared him from that, and Imam Hassan went over and made that peace treaty so that the door to guidance not be closed and he could have the opportunity to speak to the people and to teach them about Islam. But inshallah, brothers and sisters, we'll leave that for a later time. We end with salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Hasan Sheikhna, inshallah. Just a reminder that inshallah directly after Salat we will be having iftar together. We ask all the brothers and sisters to please join us. Now inshallah we'll ask our brother Ali Jama to help us recite the dua, and then after that we'll start getting ready for Salat inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. إلهي عظم البلاء وبرح الخفاء وانكشف الغطاء وانقطع الرجاء وضاقت الأرض ومنعت السماء وأنت المستعان وإليك المشتكى وعليك المعول في الشدة والرخاء. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أولي الأمر الذين فرضت علينا طاعتهم وعرفتنا بذلك منزلتهم، ففرج عنا بحقهم فرجا عاجلا قريبا كلمح البصر أو هو أقرب. يا محمد يا علي يا علي يا محمد اكفياني فإنكما كافيان وانصراني فإنكما ناصران. يا مولانا يا صاحب الزمان الغوث 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 أدركني 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 الساعة 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 العجل 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 يا أرحم الراحمين بحق محمد وآل الطاهرين. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين.
Hasan, Brother Ali. Inshallah, right now we're going to start getting ready for Salat. For the brothers, if anybody would like to help put some of the chairs on the side, we don't need any of the chairs. Inshallah, as we start preparing for Laylatul Qadr, inshallah, we hope everybody joins us. So we don't need the chairs. If everybody could just stack the chairs on the side.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا وقعت الواقعة ليس لوقعتها كاذبة خافضة